Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to give it just a minute to let everyone get joined in and connected and all those good things. So we'll get started here in just a minute. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you again for being here this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're at in the country. On behalf of the Environmental Finance Center Network, we want to welcome you to another webinar in our Green Infrastructure webinar series. Today's session is on community engagement for successful green infrastructure and nature-based solutions to water, wastewater, and stormwater challenges. My name is Dawn Nall, and I am with the Southwest Environmental Finance Center. I'm filling in for our host that's been doing the entire webinar series, Shannon. So if you're used to seeing Shannon's pretty face, she'll be back again for the next session. She is currently out on parental leave. They've added a new member to their family, so we're super excited for her. And so I am filling in for her shoes, big shoes to fill. But we're glad that you're here with us today. So this series is made possible with funding from the U.S. EPA under a grant aimed at helping rural, small, and tribal communities and wastewater treatment systems to access funding. So the goal for this project really is to see more compliance with the Clean Water Act to prevent, reduce, and eliminate pollution in our water. So before we begin, I'm going to go over just a few logistics. If my screen changes, there we go. So GoToWebinar has had an update in kind of recently. So if you thought you were familiar with GoToWebinar, they've changed things around a little bit. So you might want to take a look at the top right of your screen. There are some tools now that allow you to submit questions, to review the materials that we have uploaded, to I said already, to ask questions, to chat in. And then at the bottom is where you can react if you need to raise your hand or you'd like to, show us that you agree or that you like something we're saying. You can share reactions that way. So a little bit different than before. So just take a quick minute to get familiar with those settings. Then we want to make sure that everyone's aware that because this webinar is national in nature, we have not submitted it to your state for pre-approval for continuing education credits. But if you are an eligible attendee, you will receive a certificate of attendance that you can use for your personal records, and you can submit to your state for continuing education. It's up to the state if they approve it or not, but you can submit it. So to receive a certificate for this session, you have to attend the entire session. And in order for us to be able to send it to you, you have to be registered and you have to attend individually using your real name and your unique email address. If you're attending as a group, we don't know. So there's no way for us to know that you're in that group. So make sure that you are using your email and that you are viewing it individually. Certificates will then be sent via email within 30 days of today. And if you have any questions, please contact smallsystems@syr.edu. So who is the EFC in and what do we do? A little bit about us. The Environmental Finance Center Network, of which my organization, the Southwest EFC, is a part of. We provide training and technical assistance to small water, wastewater, and stormwater systems in all 50 U.S. states, the territories, and tribal groups through our capacity building programs. If your community or your utility needs assistance with any drinking water, wastewater, or stormwater system management, please feel free to contact us through our request form, which we can share in the chat, a link to. And if you're interested in receiving that free technical assistance, and again, it is free, there's no cost to you, you can reach out via the EFCN website, which is efcnetwork.org. All right. And if you're interested in viewing any of our past EFCN webinars, including this webinar series and many, many others, you can subscribe to the EFCN's YouTube channel. You can view it directly from our efcnetwork.org website, or you can view our YouTube channel. So our intention with this webinar series is to highlight the ways that effective planning, implementation, and maintenance of GI demands partnerships, the implementation and maintenance of GI demands partnerships across departments and disciplines. This requires us as organizers of this series to also look to our colleagues in planning, engineering, policy, landscape architecture, geography, community coalitions, the list goes on and on. And we also want to reach academics, practitioners, students. So here's an overview of the webinar schedule that we've hosted for the last several months and the last few that are coming up in the coming months. And we'll be doing these approximately once a quarter. So make sure to check back on the EFCN website for updated events, and you can sign up for email updates as well. Each webinar is also recorded, so you can watch either the live or the recorded versions. The recordings are posted to the event page for each webinar and will be available on that EFCN YouTube channel as well. So today, what we will be talking about is on the screen here. Our goal for the webinar is for you all attending to gain familiarity with community engagement, ensuring that planning and implementation is appropriate for your community. You'll learn how successful community education benefits green infrastructure projects. And that's about all we're gonna have time for in the hour. So please remember that you can take down our contact info at the end of the webinar and follow up with us if you'd like to talk more about anything that we cover today. And we also will have time for question and answers at the end. So I'd like to introduce our guest speakers today. As I mentioned, my name is Dawn Nall. I am a project director at the Southwest EFC. I manage a couple of our larger projects. I primarily focus on the wastewater side of things. At this point in time in my career, I've done a lot of drinking water work too in the past. My background is in engineering and have worked as a wastewater operator in my college career days. And that's what really got me interested in drinking water and wastewater. Wastewater really is my first passion. And so really excited about some of the work that we get to do in the green infrastructure world. So thanks for having us and for being here with us today. Xochitl is the public outreach coordinator with the City of Tucson's Storm to Shade Green Stormwater Infrastructure Program. In her role, she engages with the public, stakeholders, and ward office staff during design, construction, and maintenance of green stormwater infrastructure, or GSI, throughout the city. Xochitl hosts and attends public events, neighborhood association meetings, and town halls to connect and build relationships with residents who are interested in learning more about GSI. Xochitl holds a master's degree in public health and has worked in nonprofits and other public sector institutions to build and deliver processes and programming that bring positive outcomes to underserved and marginalized communities. Fawad is a professor and extension specialist, biological and agricultural engineering, getting ahead of myself there, at Texas A&M AgriLife, at the Dallas Research and Extension Center. And then finally, my colleague at the Syracuse Environmental Finance Center, Zoe, will be behind the scenes running the chat and the polls and helping field questions for the speakers. So if you're having any kind of audio issues or you need help with figuring out where something's at, please chat with Zoe and she can help you try to solve any problems that you're having. So before I hand things over to our guest speakers, I want to just go over briefly the basics of green infrastructure as it relates to water, wastewater, and stormwater systems. If this is the first webinar in the series that you're watching, please know that you can also view the very first webinar in the series to learn more detail than obviously what I'm going to cover in the next couple of slides. That video is recorded and is hosted on the EFCN site. And for those of you that are returning, we'll keep this brief so that you don't have to rehash things too many times, but we always think that a brief introduction to green infrastructure is good for any of our new audience members. So what makes green infrastructure such a compelling water management option for communities of all sizes? That's what we want to kind of talk about and see why it's beneficial. So when you're thinking of the words water infrastructure, we almost always associate things like pipes or concrete lined drainage trenches or your treatment plants. All of this infrastructure, all of these assets are primarily made from concrete and steel. And that's what we are talking about with the word gray. So then what about green? What is the green part? There's no official kind of universally agreed on definition, but for the purpose of this series, we kind of break it down this way. So with green infrastructure, we're talking about water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure that integrates natural systems like plant growth, the water cycle, and soil filtration as part of the function of infrastructure. So it's beyond just the bacterial and biochemical processes that are commonly used in wastewater treatment. And that could look like something like a vegetated swale, a rain garden, or a wetland, whether it's constructed or naturally occurring. So from these pictures, it may seem like I'm creating a dichotomy, green versus gray, but actually, in most cases, we advocate using both of these systems to work together, especially if you're dealing with I&I, if you're dealing with combined sewers, stormwater and wastewater sewers combined. Green infrastructure can help control and slow the flow of rainwater, and it would be super beneficial to helping the water get back into the ground rather than flow through those concrete structures all the way to your treatment plant. So we do typically encourage that we're using both of them together. So let's look at one example of green and gray infrastructure where they share a function but look different on the ground. So here we have concrete sewer pipes, and of course their function is to convey the stormwater away from the roads and the buildings. But the green counterpart is an infiltration trench. And this one is situated along a parking lot or kind of along a roadway. And it has, in addition to the water flow control, it has these co-benefits, these added co-benefits of the infiltration trench could include the filtration of the water through the soil by allowing the plants and the fungi in the trench to break down pollutants associated with the adjacent road, your heavy metals, your oils, things that we don't really like to see at the treatment plant. So this is a feature that the community can enjoy walking along, with the plants cooling the air and improving the air quality, as well by capturing carbon and other airborne particles. So if you're still feeling a little bit confused about what green infrastructure is and what it looks like at different scales, please watch that first webinar in the series, and it gives a broad overview and a lot more examples of green infrastructure. So why are we advocating for green infrastructure or nature-based solutions? A big reason is climate resiliency. Much of our current infrastructure was built with a very different idea of what a 100-year storm might look like than what we're seeing now. So here in New Mexico, for example, what looks like longer periods of drought followed by deluges of precipitation are far outside the historical norms for both aspects. And much of our aging storm sewer infrastructure is not built to handle the volumes of water that we're seeing. And we're losing a lot of that valuable fresh rainwater as runoff instead of being able to capture it. So GI at all scales can capture, slow, and filter stormwater where it falls. This reduces the burden on the treatment plants and improves water quality by treating the water before it returns to the sources we use for drinking water, such as your rivers and your groundwater. Co-benefits, in addition to slowing and infiltrating rainwater, there are a wide range of co-benefits for both humans and wildlife alike. There's, such a wide range of co-benefits that great infrastructure just can't provide, whether it's to the habitat, creating habitat, or other human health benefits like cleaner air, cooler environments, things like that. And then finally, partnerships here in the US in both law and down to the community level. Drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater systems are built and managed as separate from one another, We typically don't communicate a great deal amongst those three groups, even though all the water on Earth is part of the same system, the one water cycle. But often there's limited understanding of how to fund and implement green infrastructure because it does demand some of that cross-disciplinary, cross-departmental collaboration in order to be successful. And so we're really encouraged when we do see communities implementing green infrastructure because it takes those different, very siloed groups and allows them to start talking and sharing ideas, which is always a good thing. So all of these are reasons that we are encouraged and want to encourage you to consider green infrastructure. So now I'm going to turn things over to our first presenter, to Xochitl from Tucson's Green Stormwater Infrastructure Program, and let her talk to you about her work and what she does with community engagement. So Zoe, if you can turn things over to Xochitl, I would appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dawn. Can you see my screen? Yes.
Yeah. Everything looks good.
Great. So hi, everybody. My name is Xochitl Coronado Vargas, and I'm the Public Outreach Coordinator for the City of Tucson's Storm to Shade program, which is the city's Green Stormwater Infrastructure program. Dawn already gave a really great introduction of what I do, and she also gave a pretty nice introduction of Green Stormwater Infrastructure. But I do want to share this image of Green Stormwater Infrastructure in Tucson. This is a rendering that we're doing for some of our interpretive signage that's going to be going out to some of the sites that we've built. And some of the sites that were built prior to the Storm to Shade program. But it's a really good depiction of how stormwater is captured in the landscape through green stormwater infrastructure, and that water is used by the plants in the landscape rather than going into, like Dawn said, into the gray infrastructure. Here in Tucson, we don't have, we have a separate sewer and stormwater system. And the Storm to Shade program, the GSI program, does not manage the any kind, it's not regulatory driven that we are doing this. That permit, the MS4 permit, is managed by the Department of Transportation and Mobility. So really, the big reason that Tucson is doing green stormwater infrastructure is to be able to utilize the rainfall that we have, which is about 11 inches a year, in a way that allows us to grow more trees, add more vegetation to the environment, and possibly cool our environment. We have a very hot environment and it just keeps getting hotter and hotter. And so people have been doing this in Tucson for many, many years, even though the Storm to Shade program has only been around since 2021, fully staffed since 2021. So here is our very first mandate as a program, is to build new green stormwater infrastructure. And the sites, the pictures here are the before pictures of the site before the installations were built and after installations were built. These are all pretty new sites. So the vegetation is still very small, but there are trees in there. Just hard to see in these little pictures. And the site selection is really determined by a few things. So we utilize Tucson, like a tree equity score. It's actually more specialized for Tucson that our Office of Equity created. It's called the Tucson Equity Tree Index, and it really takes into account social vulnerability factors as well as heat and existing tree canopy. And so we try to focus on areas that have higher social vulnerability, which also tend to be the areas that have lower tree canopy and happen to be areas that have been historically disinvested. We also focus on trying to collaborate with existing improvement projects that are led by the Parks Department or the Department of Transportation, because it gives us an opportunity to add more improvement to whatever they're doing. So let's say a park is adding a splash pad and a walking path, and it's in one of our priority areas based on equity. So we're like, yeah, let's also, is there opportunity to take stormwater off of that parking lot and put it into the park in some area that is underutilized? In projects that are led by the Department of Transportation and Mobility, it might be that they're adding a bicycle boulevard and with all the signage and the reduced speed and maybe some speed humps, but they don't have a whole lot of funding for vegetation or landscape improvements. And if there's opportunity for us to add that, we do that through our funds. Oh, and one more thing, we are often being directed to add projects, new GSI, by elected officials and the mayor's office. Elected officials being council members, they know their constituents well, and they know which areas of town are in need of more investment. So we often look to them to give us some kind of direction to where they want us to use our funds. The second mandate is that we maintain new and existing GSI. So as I said before, there was a lot of GSI that was built prior to the existence of the Storm to Shade program, and it was built through grants and investments that the city made. And it was largely really requested in parts of town that tend to be more highly educated, more affluent, and people kind of had more connection to their government and kind of were able to, speak English and apply for grants and funding and things like that. Organized communities received funding, and so a lot of GSI went into areas. So before the Storm to Shade program, if you looked at a map of where GSI existed in the city of Tucson, you could really see the disparity between the areas that had higher social vulnerability having less or no GSI versus the areas with, like more affluent parts of town having a lot more GSI. So for 25 years, 20 years before the Storm to Shade program, the city has been getting these types of investments. But what happens is they become a burden to community really when people become older and are unable to care for the structures, or they move out. And so whoever requested it in the first place or applied for the grant no longer lives in the area. And so whoever was maintaining it is no longer maintaining it. And so really one of the challenges to our program was really getting buy-in from the community about building more, because they saw this infrastructure as an eyesore. It was chock full of invasive plant species and not really functioning, totally filled up with sediment. And so one of the things when Storm to Shade was created was we have to maintain everything that is existing out there so that it's working properly. And so each site gets a visit 4 times a year, and includes structural repair, removal of sediment, trash and invasive species removal, and plant care. And now people love GSI, and most people want it in their community. Today I'm going to talk about a case study. This is just one project, but it is our most expensive, most highly visible project that we've had as a program. It is along a very busy commercial stretch of road. It's called South 12th Avenue. And this part of town is on Tucson's south side. It has it's very high priority area for us because it has high social vulnerability and really low tree equity. It is a corridor of a lot of Latino-owned businesses, and a lot of the businesses, they rent their space there. So it's a lot of businesses that are owned by Latinos, but maybe the buildings that they're renting are owned by people that are out of town. This particular area is the heart of Tucson's culinary culture, and it's a key area for its designation as the first UNESCO city of gastronomy in the US. It's known for authentic and diverse Mexican food, but it's also known to the local community for so many things. You can go to South 12th Avenue to this 1 mile stretch, and you can get your tires changed, and you can go to the meat market and get your hair cut, go to the barber shop. There you can do folklorico dancing. There are just so many different types of businesses along this stretch that really it's a one-stop shop for anybody. So it is busy. There's a lot of traffic along this road, and it's very rich culturally, and has a very rich cultural heritage. So just a little background on another improvement project that was completed along this route was that this exact stretch of road, the 1 mile stretch of road on South 12th Avenue, underwent a complete streets improvement project by the Department of Transportation Mobility in 2020. So if you look at the picture on the left, you will see that the road, here are some of the changes that happened. They added sidewalks. So you see sidewalks on the right hand side of the slide and no sidewalks on the left. This is the exact same location. There was a reduction in parking in the public right-of-way, so people would be able to park there. And in some of those areas, there was some landscaping that was added. There was like driveway improvements because most of those businesses just kind of had driveways every which way. So they kind of formalized driveways for many of the businesses. In addition, there was additional on-street parking that was added because all of the public right-of-way parking was removed. And they added or widened bicycle lanes in the area. And the biggest change is that they reduced travel lanes. So it used to be that you could travel, there was 2 lanes going north, 2 lanes going south, and a center turning lane. And it was reduced to 1 lane going north, 1 lane going south, and the center turning lane, but then the bike lane was widened. But because there was so much asphalt kind of still in the air in that area where that lane used to exist, they kind of just created these kind of buffer zones that remained asphalted, and they had extruded curb kind of over the asphalt, and they put these big concrete balls in the center of a lot of these I think it was for visibility. They also did some flex posts and things like this. And in the photo, you don't see that, but that's, I think, because a lot of it was knocked over and removed. And so the Department of Transportation and Mobility did this because this 1 mile stretch of road was considered one of the deadliest for pedestrians in Tucson. And so there was a huge need to make this road safer for people because it's such a highly visible and trafficked commercial corridor for people to be able to cross and run their errands from one side of the street to the other. People were getting hit by cars all the time. Another thing, while there was some landscape improvements, what was shown to the public when this project was when the department first started doing outreach to the public, really didn't look a whole lot like what was put into the ground. And the reason is a lot of the landscape improvements that were promised, the budget just couldn't cover those improvements. So a lot of those buffered asphalted areas were supposed to have been vegetated areas, and they weren't. So this all happened in 2020. Storm to Shade became a program in 2021, and right away we were tapped to and told by elected officials that we really wanted to deliver the promises that were made by the Department of Transportation Mobility in this Complete Streets project to the public, which meant adding the vegetated areas, adding more shade, adding more vegetation. And since we are a green stormwater infrastructure program, the landscape would be, water capturing landscape. So initially, what we thought is that the same design that was used for the Complete Streets project would easily be able to be modified to be used as our design for the GSI installations. And so I immediately went out and started doing outreach in 2022. And what turned out to happen is that there was some requirements from engineering to do potholing, some delays in design, and it took 3 years to get to our final design for the GSI components of the project. And so I did the outreach events listed on here twice. So I did door knocking. I went from business to business, talking to people about the project, the GSI project that was going to be happening. I sent out mailers, and with these kinds of communications, I had information about what outreach events were coming up so that they could come and learn more about the project that was going to be getting constructed, and information about the project website so that they could go and look and share that with other people that they knew, and my contact information. Outreach events included food and childcare. There was one community cleanup in 2025 just to get people together so that they can come look at what was going to happen, and also, come and do the service of cleaning up in that stretch of road. I did several Spanish radio appearances and tabling at lots of other community events always happening. There's Dia de la Niñez, which is this kind of family-oriented event where lots of people come. I showed all of the plans and all of the provided all the information to everybody that stopped by that table. I went to the 5K run that's run by the one of the big nonprofit organizations on the South Side. Gave a lot of information there. We put an ad in the bilingual newspaper. We did write-ups for the ward offices and newsletters so that people could read about what was coming. And of course, the project website gave all the information. Despite this, when I did do outreach events, I had quite a few residents from the area show up to the outreach events, and people in the community that live there, they were all very excited to see these changes happening because they knew that these were the improvements that they were anticipating with the first project, with the Complete Streets project. And most of the people that show up to outreach events typically are kind of more in the know of what the city is doing and have been able to advocate for themselves in the past, and they are just more familiar with processes, and there was support from these folks. And although I heard a lot from people about how those extruded curves and those balls were problematic for vehicles because people were unused to the redesign of the road and would kind of just run over them, mess up their tires. People did want something better. However, some people, and this was a pretty mixed bag, wanted the road to just go back to how it was. I heard a lot from folks that they wanted the road to be turned back to 2 lanes going south, 2 lanes going north, and a center lane. But that wasn't what Storm to Shade was going to do. That was something that if it was going to be turned back, it would have been something that was decided by, I don't know, the mayor or some elected officials or the director of the Department of Transportation Mobility. So I had to reiterate a lot that this was just a greening project for the area, and that's all we were doing is taking the existing buffers that were unutilized in the road and turning them into green stormwater infrastructure. So construction for the project began in September of 2025. It is due to complete in a couple less than 2 weeks. But the first 2 months of construction were heavily barricaded. September and October, they had to do a lot of the curb work, which means, and they had to do the demolishing of the pavement. So that meant that traffic had to travel differently than what it was used to traveling, because cars needed to be, directed to go away from where that work was happening. And then again, it got moved so that it could happen on the other side of the road. So what ends up happening, I'm sure everywhere when there's construction and it's heavily barricaded, is that traffic starts to avoid the area. I know I avoid areas that are under construction and where there's a lot of things going on. And so that's what started happening here. And so businesses began to feel economic effects of the construction. And while only a couple of business owners showed up to any of my outreach events, all of them organized and started to reach out to the Office of Economic Initiatives, who I'm going to just give a big shout out to Frankie, Francisca. She has been working with business owners on that strip for years, doing technical assistance, workshops. She does all sorts of help. She gives all sorts of help to small businesses so that their businesses can thrive. And so they started reaching out to her, not to me, even though everybody I assumed had my contact information. And she started telling me that they were organizing to make media appearances in opposition to the construction project, which they did. And then they formed a Facebook page. And on the Facebook page, where they were posting videos of the traffic being super congested and some of the barricades when they were knocked over, pictures of the construction workers like taking their lunch around their truck, not showing that they weren't doing anything and that the construction wasn't moving fast enough. So I talked to Frankie. She gave me the contact for kind of the guy that was, or the business owner that was kind of organizing everybody else. And I started talking to him and I was like, what can we do? We want to fix this. We want to make this okay for you all. And he said, I think people really want to be heard. And I think people are really upset and they're hurting. Can we host a meeting? And so we set up a time. I worked with him to make sure that we could set up a meeting during a time that they all could attend, knowing that the majority of them had not attended any of my outreach events, meetings, had not contacted me prior to the project when I had done all of the outreach. So we held a meeting. It was attended by the staff at Storm to Shade, including my supervisor, the project manager. We had the Office of Economic Initiatives. We had the ward office. From one of the wards, there's another ward that represents part of that strip, but they were having an emergency, so they were unable to attend. And then we had a representative from the mayor's office. And here's what we heard. We heard how the construction had been impacting their businesses. One business owner was at risk of shutting down. He did subsequently shut down his business within about 2 months into the construction. And it was very unfortunate because there was a series of unfortunate events that happened to his business. I think it had caught fire or was set on fire by folks who are unhoused that were kind of camping out behind his business. And he had to shut down to do the repairs, but he ended up doing renovations and had issues with permitting. And when he reopened, the Storm to Shade project was under construction. So he had no leeway there and his business didn't make it. We heard from other businesses, can the construction be sped up? Can the city offer financial assistance to struggling businesses? The city can't. There's some clause somewhere in some bylaws that we are unable to offer financial assistance. And with, I'll talk a little bit about how we responded to some of these asks. The city doesn't care about the South Side is something that I didn't just hear this at this meeting. I hear this pretty much every time I go to the South Side. And, I think a lot of cities have areas where there has been disinvestment in the city, and that tends to be the area where there has been a lot of disinvestment historically. But also there is a history of distrust due to contamination in the water that was delivered. Lots of people in the 80s discovered that there was an epidemic of rare cancers and autoimmune disorders that was linked to the water that was being served to that community, because the water that was being served came from groundwater that had been contaminated with TCE from the Air Force Base, some kind of solvent that they used that they just discarded into the groundwater. And unbeknownst, obviously, to the water department, it was served to residents down there, and a lot of people got sick and a lot of people died. So there was a lot of mistrust already in the city, in the government. The city made promises that it didn't keep. I heard from some folks that there was some facade improvement grants during the Complete Streets project that had been promised, that they were going to receive a match for doing facade improvements, and the grant never came through. So they did all these facade improvements out of their own pocket, and they never received this match that was promised. I heard from people that the road diet was a pilot and that it would be turned back if people didn't like it. I don't know how that was ever said to folks, but I wonder if what was said is that if the safety of it failed, that it would be turned back. I'm not really sure, but I heard this from several people, and of course, people kind of clung to that. There was a lot of safety concerns with the in-house. As I mentioned before, one of the businesses had actually been set afire by some activity from the unhoused behind his business. But there's just really is there's a huge fentanyl crisis here in Tucson, and there's a lot of people without homes who are also using drugs, and just it's been a little bit, dangerous for folks, coming out of their business at night and feeling like, there are people, passed out in front of their building or whatever when they're getting there. And so they wanted to get some resources to deal with that. A lot of traffic safety concerns, people driving erratically. We have an issue here in Tucson where people do like fishtailing, and lots of like road racing and things like that. People expressed understanding of the current political climate, and that it was also contributing. So while people were very angry during the meeting, I have to say they were super respectful. And every time somebody complained about something that was a very legitimate complaint, they also always said, and this isn't just about the construction. This is about what's happening in our nation right now and how Latinos are being targeted and how Latinos are scared. And we know that, a lot of our clientele are people from this community, and they're scared to come out. They're scared to come get their hair cut. They're scared to come to our restaurant to eat. And we are not getting those people patronizing our businesses, and the construction is just adding to that. So there was a lot of reiteration of that. They really wanted to help promoting their businesses, and they expressed, I can't tell you how many people came up to me after the meeting and even during the meeting and said, thank you so much for being here to listen to our concerns. I've never felt like, the city has come to me to ask to see how I'm doing and to care for how things are going down here. So lots of gratitude expressed. So here are some of the continued follow-up and support that we've given the businesses to the best of our ability. We ended up increasing the funds to the project, the GSI project, to include overtime so that the construction crews could be paid to work weekends. That way we could expedite the project timeline. The project timeline actually wasn't expediting by doing this action, but a lot of times these projects are delayed because we go out to the field, our project managers see that the installation isn't going how they wanted it to go, and so they make change orders and they say, actually, this is what you all need to do, and then that delays the timeline. And that happened in this project, but fortunately, because we had the weekend work in place, the project is not going over timeline. Weekly construction updates have been, now I sent these to business owners, and I've received emails back saying, thank you so much for your care. Thank you so much for your support. Prior to the meeting, just when I started hearing from businesses over email, we ended up removing a lot of the barricades. So traffic was actually flowing a lot more freely down the corridor. And so that was something that we took care of immediately and made a huge difference to people going back and utilizing that corridor to traffic through. We had listening sessions with law enforcement to address safety concerns that they brought up. We had informational sessions with Visit Tucson for promotional support, which is, they offered great ways to give promotion to their businesses. The Office of Economic Initiatives did so much work. They secured promotional segments on popular Spanish-speaking talk show on Saturday mornings, and every Saturday they highlight a new business from the corridor. And then we hired a professional production company to come and produce promotional materials for the businesses that will be also added to the Visit Tucson social media and websites. And the recording for those just got finished yesterday. We also, it hurt our hearts, but we eliminated so many trees from the plans based on the business owners' input. So many of the businesses did not want trees in front of their business because they were afraid it would block their facade. And so we needed to come to a compromise about that. And even though the whole goal is to add vegetation and add shade for our program, we know that the infrastructure is in place, that if maybe there is a change of heart in the future, we could always come back and add more trees. Right now, it's going to have to be in a lot of installations, shrubs, saguaros, ocotillos, some of our cacti. As of today, the project is almost complete. Several businesses have been featured on the Saturday morning talk show, the morning segment, and footage has been shot for the production as a destination, South 12th destination, which is a promotion for the businesses. Some of the lessons learned, I think deep distrust in city will negatively affect desired engagement, almost no matter what you do. I've done this kind of engagement throughout the city, and it's always harder on the south side. Also, responding to people with care and compassion makes a huge difference. I think listening without trying to defend anybody and yourself or anybody else in the city, and just accepting that the city is not perfect and we do things that are not okay for people. Pooling resources from other city departments is super, super important. And I just can't thank the Office of Economic Initiatives enough. They did so much to support us and give support to the businesses during this really difficult time for them. And do what you can to respond to those needs and be honest about what you can and you can't do and follow through with that. Here's an example of some of the other projects that we've done, and our website is tucsonaz.gov/GSI. You can see all of our projects there. We also have a presence on Instagram and Facebook, so feel free to look us up and follow us. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Xochitl. Zoe, if you can change things over to Fawad, that would be super helpful. And while we're doing that, folks, don't forget to type your questions into the question box. We will open it up to question and answer at the end of our session.
Can you guys see the screen and hear me?
Everything's great.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you, Sochil, for a great lecture. I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that we did with Texas A&M, funded by the National Science Foundation, NSF, to get communities involved in green stormwater infrastructure maintenance and funding, basically. And so I'm just going to go fast through this. Again, we all know stormwater is a problem for water quality and can cause flooding in urban areas due to increased impervious areas size, and also climate change is that making this worse with time. And traditional gray infrastructure that Don talked about doesn't actually is very difficult to adapt fast, and so green infrastructure is a great solution that can be much more easily changed to accommodate for changes resulting from urbanization or climate change. And one important thing that is needed is these community involvement in these projects. And so again, we heard about these, we have rain gardens, bioretention areas, rainwater harvesting, permeable pavement. All these are practices that increase infiltration and provide co-benefits like treatment of pollutant, biodiversity, reduce heat island mitigation as a result. So some of the challenges that have been seen with green stormwater infrastructure is lack of funding, lack of understanding, maintenance, and also equity. Like we've heard, a lot of green stormwater infrastructure usually go in more richer neighborhoods, and it's harder to get them involved and integrated in poorer neighborhoods sometimes. And we just heard the whole introduction lecture that addresses such problems. And so the idea of this project is how can we make sure that the residents have ownership of that green stormwater infrastructure. So we based our idea on a common approach that cities have for their assets, for their gray assets, these culverts, called asset management. And asset management, and I'm going to talk about this in a couple of minutes, is basically just a inventory and checking on the condition of your assets, and then planning for financing these assets long term. This is very common with gray infrastructure, but we had noticed, and Don and I worked on a project where we have started working on developing a green asset approach, mainly integrating these green assets, these green stormwater infrastructure in the same framework that you treat culverts and other gray infrastructure. And actually the Southwest Environmental Finance Center has a great resource for gray and green infrastructure integration for asset management. And so we took this project I'm talking about is a step further, where we're doing a community green asset management approach and tool, where in addition to the professionals evaluating the condition and the criticality of different green assets, we are trying to see it from a community angle. And what does a resident want to see in the rain garden, in the bioretention that is close to his house, and how can he give feedback on the condition of the system that will impact maintenance and continuous funding. So here's the framework of asset management. Basically, it's a 5-step framework where the first thing you do is you assess the condition of your different assets. Do they look good? Are they broken? Are they working like they're supposed to do? And so, step 2 is your level of service. What is it serving, and how is it working in general? Step 3 is how critical is that asset? And so, for example, with gray infrastructure, if you have a culvert that basically takes water from a very large, high-density residential area, and that culvert is clogged, then you have a big problem. So it's very highly critical. While if it's another culvert that's just empties an empty field, it falls down in criticality. Combining this criticality and the condition of your assets allows you to create a prioritization layer. So what is the most critical and in worst condition asset until you get to one that is functioning and it's not very critical and needs just regular maintenance. And that allows you to assess the cost of fixing these systems over their life cycle. And then that you can go back to your city council, and then they can start planning to have funding to to have the maintenance and the replacement of these assets on their budget for long term. So that's what they do with typical gray assets. We applied this approach to green assets and developed basically mostly what we worked on were the first 3. What are the condition of these green assets? And you can see here on the left, there's a form that we had developed. This is a lecture for another time about green asset management. And we developed a form for each type of green infrastructure: bioretention, permeable pavement, rainwater harvesting, where you can go and the things you look at are different than what you look at in a typical culvert. Mostly, that it involves plants, it involves inflow and outflow structures, and different things. So now we followed that same process and we developed this inspection form that every citizen can do and how it relates to them. And we didn't develop it ourselves. We actually had several workshops in which we had regular neighborhood people come, and then they developed these questions themselves. And I don't know if you can see it here, but some of them include the education and learning part. Are there enough signage? Is it accessible? How are the plans good? Are they appropriate to our neighborhood? Questions like that give you that system. And so in order to do this system, we actually had two steps. The first step was we had a community science working group, and these are all experts that work. The director of the Southwest Environmental Finance Center were on our community science working group. We had members of the Nature Conservancy, the Trust for Public Land, professors from different areas, and representative from the city of Denton that actually we met with monthly, and they guided our work. What do we need to do? What do we need to work? We shared with them our plans, and they got back to us with recommendations on how to do these. And then they helped us organize these several workshops, 3 or 4, for the local stakeholders, in which we started with a form that we developed with a few questions, and had these local stakeholders go to actual green stormwater infrastructure systems and try to fill these. And if they are not understanding a question, to give us a suggestion on what we need to change. And with 3 or 4 iterations of these workshops, we ended up with final CGAM, which is Community Green Asset Management forms that we can use for the system. And this is here just I'm gonna, I know it's just too much words, but I'm gonna talk about each of these together. So we had all these partners that worked with us, and the idea is that the community now is responsible. They have an access to a system where they can go and grade basically, or score a green infrastructure in their neighborhood. That involves, does it fit in the general look of your neighborhood? Is it working correctly? Does it have that plan? Does it need any maintenance? And they can report that, and then that goes straight to the city as a result. And so here's the pilot project. This is Dr. Becky Bowling, who used to be with Texas A&M, is now with with the University of Tennessee, and she's talking about with the stakeholders about certain what are these green assets and what do people look into to take those. And so from that, we actually developed a tool that is online. I'm going to go through it in a couple of moments. And basically that tool is right now for Denton County, but it can be replicated for any other area where people can go to that website. There's if they see a green asset, if they see a green stormwater infrastructure practice, they can go to the website. It could either be already there, and then they can go through the CGAM tool and answer question about it. If it's not already there, they can actually add it, create a page for it, and then as a result, like just say, this is where the location is on the map. This is where the street it's next to and what it is. It's a rain garden that you guys didn't have on your website. And then they can go and answer the inspection form, the community inspection form that is on that system. So here's, I'm going to show you the example. Click right here. So you guys can see my website now. So this is that tool. It's based on a story map from the ESRI ArcGIS company. This is there was a video that included this, but it gets removed from YouTube. I'm going to talk with the organizer to change that soon. It has information on it. This is the CGAM tool. I'm going to click on that in a second. But where was this funded from? There's a survey for people to give feedback on their idea. There's a map of all the green assets that are in the city of Denton. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are in that project. There's also pictures of the different systems. There's also, here you go, another map. There's a link to infrastructure education resource library. So this is intended to be a comprehensive green infrastructure information system. But what's important here is we can look at this tool and see it tells you what to answer. So the first thing you can go to, you give them the date, and today it's the 22nd, let's say, BGI site, let's see, I say Hickory Street, and after that, I can go to Hickory Street and click specifically on, here's Hickory Street. Let's say I'm looking at a rain garden at this site. And so now people know where it is. And then you go to next. And now it gives you that, that questionnaire that does the vegetation look healthy? Strongly agree. Is there a filter material rock that support the function of the site? You can strongly agree. There's all kinds of question here. The main site structure is in good condition. Is there signage? Are the surrounding amenities, are they well maintained? Do you have any additional comment? And so there's other questions. They're divided into categories. So that first category is the site characteristic. Second category is plan selection, maintenance of the BGI site. And again, there's 2 other pages of questionnaire. Hopefully you'll be able to access that site from the system, and you can see it as a result right here. So once this is published, you can type it, or if you take a picture of that site, you can go and play with it as much as you want. Right now, the idea of developing the system was that once a form is submitted, right now it goes to Dr. Kelly Albus, who's at Texas Women University in Denton, because she was part a co-PI on the project. But the original idea was that these form, once submitted, will go directly to the stormwater manager of the city of Denton. So if there, in case there is a need to take action, they can actually immediately take action as a result. Here you go. This is just for this slide is for when the website doesn't work on the clicking, but it worked for us. Again, it has all kinds of information that can be used, all kinds of sites. And with that, I'm going to end it. So give 10 minutes for a question for me and Xochitl.
Thank you so much, Fawad, for sharing your resources with us. If I can get control of the screen sharing again, Zoe, that would be wonderful. All right, so before we jump into the question and answer, I just wanted to share one more resource with you, and that is our integrated asset management framework that we at the Southwest CFC have developed, and we're currently in the process of giving this another round of updates and improvements. We do try to continuously update these resources so that you guys have, the most recent knowledge and pieces of information. So in the next, I think 6 months, we will have some new resources, some new information. But from our integrated asset management framework, there's also a green asset resource database that you can see on the right of the screen. And this allows you to take a look at different types of green assets, and you can filter them by several different criteria, such as ease of implementation, cost of implementation. And this is from research that we did internally, but also with a variety of green infrastructure experts. So it's not just us kind of reading the information that's out there, but getting the inherent knowledge of folks that work in green infrastructure, for a living. And so those two resources are available on our website as well. So if you're interested in learning more about asset management, if you're interested in learning more about specific types of green infrastructure, these are just two more tools that you can use. So now I'm going to open it up to question and answers. So if you have questions, make sure that you're typing them into the question box. And we will do our best to get to all of the questions that come in. We do have a couple of questions at this point, Xochitl, for you. So the first question that I'd like to ask is, are there any plans to turn your efforts into a case study or workbook to share with other cities?
That's a good question. Yesterday, I was approached by someone from Planning and Development Services, an employee of the city, who is working on a SWOT analysis for everything that's happened on that stretch of South 12th Avenue where we did the GSI project. And he is really interested in getting all of the different points of view, starting from internally from the city and then moving outward to talking to people that are business owners on that corridor. And hopefully, I don't know if there will be like some sort of document that will be published. I don't know if it'll be for, I feel like it will be internal, and we will probably make some actionable decisions about how to further add resources and investments that will help folks on that, business owners, especially on that strip of South 12th Avenue. So there are some like documentation stuff kind of happening, because it all really became like this culmination of all of these things that the city kind of has tried to do down there. And I think it will be good, because I see that there is a lot of will from elected officials to make things better for folks and to really reach folks who have been historically not tied in with the city and not really in touch with the resources that are available.
Great. And one more for you. Could you go into more detail about how you took feedback garnered from your outreach into remedies that helped build trust?
Well, after the construction had started is really when people wanted to show up and give us, I mean, the feedback was really about how the construction was hurting folks, hurting the business owners. And I mean, just like what I said, we had a meeting and we took what we could do and we immediately acted on those things. And we have continued to have communications with folks to give them information and opportunities for anything else that really was kind of on that list of needs that was expressed during that meeting. And again, like this document that somebody from the planning and development is producing will hopefully bring about some additional attention to what the needs are for folks down there and have continued support for the businesses in the long run.
Thank you. So another question, and this one is for both of you. They'd like input from each of you about your respective cities that you're working with. So is funding for green infrastructure maintenance provided through the city, or are there other avenues for receiving funding? So Fuad, do you want to go first, and then we'll give it back to Social?
Sure. Yes. So funding for maintenance. Now, funding for establishment of green infrastructure, there are avenues. One of them is the EPA 319H grants. These are for watershed protection, for water quality improvement, and they do fund green infrastructure establishment in many places. But maintenance, once it's established, it's considered part of the landscape, at least in the Texas and DFW area, and that is the job of the city. Although, just to make sure that they're doing it correctly, faculty like me that do that for a living, we try to meet with their staff and we organize workshops on how to do green infrastructure maintenance.
And for the Storm to Shade program here in Tucson, when the program was developed, the way that it was thought up to be funded is to add a small fee to every water bill from anybody within the city of Tucson. So there is a little fee. I think it averages to about $1, a little bit over $1 a month to each city, at least the residential customers, and that creates a fund, and then those funds are split up into funds for building new green stormwater infrastructure projects and to maintain new and existing GSI. But it's very flexible. As we build more, there's obviously going to be more of a need for maintenance, so that can be allocated to maintenance. And we have a maintenance program manager who does the work orders. We have an asset management system where all of the assets for GSI are in the asset management system, and we do work orders towards those. But there's preventative maintenance in our we have 11 contractors who are specialized in GSI, so the GSI has different maintenance needs than just your typical landscape. And so if they haven't done GSI maintenance in the past, we make them go through a course so that they know what they're doing. And they are deployed to each site. I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 times a year, just preventative. But if they see issues at the site that need more attention, they send her, the maintenance program manager, information about what they see the need for, and she issues more work orders for that site. So it's very cool because the sites they look great all the time and they're functioning because we have this amazing maintenance program that is fully funded.
Great, thank you both. I think that we are almost at time. I have one more reminder that I want to share, is that at the end of the session, we will send out a survey. So we would love to get feedback from you about, that's an interesting blank slide. There we go, about the survey. And get information from you about how you how this webinar was and what you would like to hear about in the future webinars. And then also contact information for me. If there were questions that we weren't able to get to or that you've thought of afterwards, please reach out to me and I can get you in touch with our speakers or answer the questions internally if we're able to do so. I wanted to, again, thank our guest speakers for being with us today, for sharing their expertise, and for you as our audience for being a part of our webinar and for being a part of this webinar series. Make sure that you check out the upcoming webinars in the future. The next one should be held on April 16th, and we're looking forward to that one. So thank you all for your time. Thank you to our guests, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone.